you guys have to stop pressuring Emma Watson to get married, you know? In fact, the British actress recently said that pressuring young people to get married is a form of violence. I thought that was kind of wild. It's part of a series of statements and reflections that she expressed on a podcast hosted by Jay Shetty. It's a wellness podcast with, I believe, over 4 million subscribers. And it's an interesting interview for a lot of reasons, but I am going to focus on her very strange take on marriage. So let's get into it. So Watson, best known for her appearance as Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter franchise, went on this podcast at her own request. She apparently reached out to Jay Shetty and booked it herself because she is kind of a wellness girly. And if you listen to us, it's over 2.5 hours long. You'll notice a lot of what I call self-help talk, lots of holding space, lots of reflections, lots of thanking you for expressing that. I'm not against this on its face, but it's obvious to me, and this is the only episode of this podcast I've ever watched, that it's sort of a place for famous people to express some sort of deep thought. Maybe that's helpful to some people. I don't know. And I want to start off by saying I'm not here just to dunk on Emma Watson. I think some of the things that she talks about are interesting. I mean, she had a very unique upbringing as a child star, especially for such a huge mega movie franchise. And I think that some of her reflections about how that impacted her sense of friendships, how it impacted her feeling of purpose are good. I don't think that there's anything wrong in expressing them. Maybe I would disagree in some places on her takes, but it's not the worst take ever. Now, you guys probably know this podcast because she talked about J.K. Rowling and J.K. Rowling's trans issue, and she has this quote about, I'm trying to love someone even if I don't agree with their take. That one's kind of getting the headlines. What I find interesting is that Emma Watson is highly articulate. She went to Brown. She's mentioned in this podcast she's in a master's for creative writing. I mean, she's obviously someone who likes to communicate effectively, likes to be well read, and enjoys getting feedback from people whose opinion she values. That seems to be a crux of her personality, that she is looking for a little bit of validation from the outside world that she is moving in an acceptable direction. I don't want to come on here and just bash her right away, but we have to look at her statements on marriage, which I think are going to get skewed in a wacky feminist direction that we just don't need. So about an hour and a half in, Emma Watson, who's referenced dating a couple different times in this podcast, is asked to kind of go in deeper on her thoughts on marriage.
And I was thinking about that with you as well. Like, I know you talked about how getting asked the question, when are you getting married?
Yeah.
Or why aren't you married yet?
Yes.
And that's something every woman's hearing. What's your reaction when you hear that?
I'm just so happy not to be divorced yet. Like, that sounds like a really negative answer, but I think that we're being pressured and forced into this thing that, like, I believe is a kind of miracle.
So she's charming. She starts off with a joke that she's glad she hasn't been divorced, and she talks about, needing to find yourself. I understand some of where she's coming from. I want to be empathetic to kind of the uncertainty of marriage, especially for someone whose parents are divorced, and that she's mentioned earlier in this long podcast impacted how she felt, like the sense of stability. She said that, going back and forth between her mom and dad's house, she felt like she was changing costumes, that she grew up between two different houses with two different sets of values. I could understand where launching into adulthood, that could set you on a foot where you are concerned about a sense of stability or not knowing what's going on. I disagree with this idea that people are being pressured into marriage. I don't know if that's something she isn't talking about, but her mom is down her throat about it, or if it's just a tabloid thing. But it seems like, as a culture, I mean, definitely in America, probably also in the UK, people put marriage on the back burner all the time. I mean, I'm going to show you a couple different charts here. There's this article from The Hill, which came out in 2019, I believe, that points out that marriage is incredibly delayed. I mean, I think that the average age for men and women at this point, again, when this article was published in a couple of years ago, the average age for a first-time marriage for men was 30, and it was 28 for women. I mean, if you're not getting married until you're 28, that's way up from the 1960s, when I think a third of the population was married by the time they were 21. I assume you're not getting pressured. Additionally, some of the reasons that you would be pressured have changed. I mean, people are increasingly having children before they're married or out of wedlock consciously. Not just like accidental pregnancy, but they are choosing to not get married. It's across both racial and socioeconomic lines that people are opting to forego marriage, even if they want children. Obviously, at one point, having children, the goal was not to have them before you were married. The goal was to get married first. Additionally, people cohabitate at higher rates than ever at this point. People are choosing to live together before they get married. In fact, they don't see marriage as the end goal. Some people opt to live together forever. Like that's the commitment at that point. So this idea that there's a cultural pressure doesn't bear out in the data. I'm not really sure what she's referring to. Now, she's a young starlet. She's 35 now. Maybe Emma Watson is just responding to the speculation about who she's dating all the time. That would be annoying. It's annoying for regular people when, you go to Thanksgiving and someone is like, are you dating anyone? Are you getting married? Especially if it's something you want and maybe it's not happening. But I think that she is overstating the kind of pressure that's out there. Our cultures, Western culture, is retreating from the idea that marriage is an obligation for young people and that it's something they should aspire to. I personally think marriage is good. I think it's a stabilizing institution. I don't think it's easy. I don't think you can just marry anyone, but I think marriage is something we should promote. And I think increasingly my position is in the minority, especially given the way our social cultural data bears out. Watson goes on to say that she doesn't feel like she's entitled to marriage. Like it's not something that she expects. And I actually kind of agree with this point. Let's hear what she has to say.
I might never be worthy of it. I hope it happens to me, but I don't feel entitled to it. It will either be part of my purpose here and my destiny, or it won't. And I think the way we treat it is though, well, why haven't you? And this is something that has to happen in this certain time span and at this certain age in this kind of way. Is like the least romantic thing I can possibly think of.
Now, I'm not sure we're totally aligned in where we're coming from on this, but I think Emma Watson is right. Marriage is not a guarantee. And I think you do need to live a life that is valuable, that you find fulfilling, that has, rich sense of community and has purpose. That's not necessarily just to be married. And that's kind of for someone, I wanted to be married. I wanted to have children, but if those things weren't in God's plan for me, I had to have a fulfilling life anyways. And it's a struggle that I think a lot of, especially maybe conservative women, but just generally women have. They know they would like to have children, but maybe it's not happening, or maybe they, haven't met someone or whatever reason. In that time where you're waiting to discern if that's the path forward for you, you still, can cultivate your community and your interests and find purpose. And again, I don't know that Emma Watson would put it in the vaguely Christian religious terms that I just have, but it's not the worst point. And I think we have to acknowledge that some people assume that they'll be married, and that assumption that it's happening or that desire to get married can lead them astray. Here's a little bit more of the interview.
If I had tried to get married any point, basically before about a year ago, it would have been carnage. I just didn't know myself well enough yet. I didn't have a clear enough idea of what my purpose, my vision, how I was going to be of service. I didn't know where I really felt like I needed to be. I think I have some of those answers now. So when I meet someone, I can say, hi, I'm Emma. This is what I care about. This is where the people I love the most live. This is where it's meaningful for me to be in the world. And then they can decide whether they can see that there's a way that I can serve what they're trying to do and they can serve what I'm trying to do. But before that, like they would have just got like a very mixed signal. I mean, there's some parts of me that have stayed utterly consistent,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some parts that like I was really still teasing out and figuring out. And I think it's such a violence and it's such a cruelty on people, and especially young people, I think, to make, and especially women, to make them feel like they have no worth or like they haven't succeeded yet in life because they haven't forced to its culmination something that I just don't think can or should ever be forced. It's something that, like, honestly, I feel like I've had to earn, I've had to work for, to be in a place where I feel like I can look someone in the eye and be able to tell them who I am and to have some idea, and it will change and grow, of what I want and what I'm here to do. That takes work. Like, I have like really sat with myself in a lot of discomfort and asked myself a lot of very difficult questions to be at that point. It hasn't happened to me yet.
I think this is some of the squishy stuff that millennials get tripped up on. They think that they have to know everything about themselves and have a fixed purpose and have all of these things in place before they can get married. And I don't think that's realistic. I think people grow and change over time. Now, if you grew up in an environment where you don't feel like at 18 or, let's say 25, you have a developed moral compass, you're not really sure of how to navigate the world, you don't have values to fall back on, then it may take longer. And to me, that's a sign that you need to raise your children in communities with shared values like a church. You need to be representing those values. You need to be talking to them about, who they're going to grow up to be, because otherwise they have sort of a suspended adolescence when they're actually supposed to be becoming full-blown adults. But with Emma Watson, she says like she didn't know her vision. She was still figuring things out. And I think that she is capitalized. She is touching on anxiety that a lot of women have, that they have to figure all kinds of things out before they get married. But the reality is she could be like, I'm going to be a playwright now, and I know that these are my values and everything is exactly the way I think it is, and I'm ready to get married. And in 5 years from now, she could discover a new profession. Technology can have changed the playwriting world. She could have gone through a life event that has shifted her values tremendously. And you would hope that she had married someone who is growing and changing and standing by her. And I think that this, I didn't know myself well enough, is something that women say when they're actually not addressing some of the anxieties of committing to someone. Now, I don't know Emma Watson's dating history, and I don't care about it really. I just know that these remarks will ring true for women who are like, okay, right, so it makes sense. I should wait. I should delay marriage for as long as possible. And I think that's actually coming from a place of fear and not a place of strength. And to wrap this up, I want to point out that Emma Watson actually does have an interesting and I think pretty good understanding of falling in love and finding a spouse that you want to be with for a long time. I'm going to play this clip.
Because obviously what you have with someone is wonderful, right? Like what you two share together. But if you can be in service of a vision that you both share, or at the very least, are you willing to honor and give dignity to the work of the other person and whatever their vision or mission is in this world? That to me seems far more sustainable than anything else. And so I guess my big hope or wish would be that I met someone who feels like what I want to do in the world, yes, that I'm important, but they also feel that what I'm here to do is important to them too, and in some way intersects with what they're here to do.
Someone who has a shared purpose and sense of vision, someone who is working towards something that you also believe in. That's powerful. Now, why do we have to go through all this finding ourselves if you know that's what you're looking for? I think she's not giving herself enough credit, and like a lot of women, is operating out of a fear of being hurt and being left and for a marriage falling apart. And those are real. We can't be mean to people who fear those things. Those are totally realistic anxieties, but there's just more to it than that, and I wish that people wouldn't fear marriage like this. So that's all from me today. Let me know what you think. Do you think that these excuses to delay getting married make sense? What was your experience when you were trying to find someone? I'd love to read your comments. You can come back in a couple days. I'll have another video up then. Thanks, guys.